And this, Video Copilot, again, all of this, Video Copilot, this was their Soul Drain tutorial, which is fascinating because it's all just a load of different particle effects, all combined together to give you sort of, you can see the little particles there, and then I think this was a slightly bigger string of particles, and then part of the Soul Drain was using a liquefy tool, which was like, what the fuck? And you can literally just, you pull the liquefaction up, and you can actually animate that liquefaction as well, so that's why you're able to get that sort of, I've gone back too far. That's where you get that sort of, wibble, 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 wibble. And then you can sort of take that layer of wibbleness. I did state quite categorically this is not a tutorial, so wibbleness is not a technical term. So on top of this, you've got this Soul Drain technique from Video Copilot, and then on this text layer behind it, you've actually got this sort of rusting... I went for a very reddy, rusty, bloody colour because I thought it looked awesome. I must admit, it was entirely accidental. I just hit some buttons, hit some settings, explored the options that were being provided to me, and it was, oh, yes, please, that bloody rusty colour, that looks incredible against the stone. And I was really very pleased with it. But that's combining two techniques from Video Copilot into one section, because if you do look carefully, because I must admit, I always was slightly concerned. It's a bit more, you can see it clearer in that end card of Shang Tsung draining the soul. But if you look very carefully, behind the obvious soul drain, it looks almost like this is just a new image that was replacing the old stone one, but it's actually the rusty colour builds up. As I say, it's very, very quick, and it turns out I could have probably gotten away with just swapping. I'm pointing at the pissing screen again. I could have probably just gotten away with creating that rust effect and swapping images. So swapping that stone image for the rusty image. But that wasn't the point in learning. So I learnt the tutorial. It just didn't look... But it's very difficult to see. But I promise you, what happens... Again, this is all to do with, I think, lumamats and brightnesses of fractal noises and stuff. But the sort of rustiness expands across the text rather than just appearing. It does do a sort of slightly organic growth, because I believe originally it's meant to be moss type deal. Again, I'll address this bit because it disappointed me that I couldn't figure it out. This is another Video Copilot lightning effect. It's the Saber plugin. So just to show you the Saber plugin. Okay, wait, did we? Yeah. So Ice Beam Saber plugin. Yeah, doesn't look anything like the lightning. It's the same plugin, just different settings. Different flame, all exactly the same. That Saber plugin from Video Copilot. And I can't emphasise how good that Saber plugin is. If you have ever touched After Effects, I would highly recommend looking at Video Copilot and looking into their Saber plugin, because it's incredible. The variety it provides you is truly amazing. It absolutely is. Now, with this lightning wrap, what I really wanted to do was go sort of literally wrapping round, so it was a bit more almost like a Tesla coil-ish type thing, so that you have that wrap round. But I couldn't just could not figure out how to get a bit on top of the one, then a bit behind the one, then a bit on top of the one, bit behind the one, bit on top of the one, bit behind the one, bit on top of the one. Because I think I did explore masks, but I don't think they worked. Although I must admit, having recently been playing with After Effects again, and by recently I mean just moments before this recording, I think I may have actually figured out a solution to that, because all of these Saber plugins are based on being on a black screen, a black background. And what you can do is you can set the overlay.
With these two monsters, I built the overlay network. IXE Summon number 39, Utopia!
To be screen rather than normal, and that eradicates that black background and just leaves you with the lightning. So your theory's not going to work, is it? My theory is not quite going to work, no. Or would it have worked? No, don't know. There's something in my brain. There's something in my brain telling me I might have been able to work that out after all, but throughout trying to build this intro, I couldn't work out how to mask that out, because I don't think a standard mask worked, but there may have been a solution, something involving putting another shape over the top of it. Maybe not. I don't know. But nonetheless, it did annoy me, and it still does, clearly, because I'm still trying to think of a solution to the problem. But I couldn't work out a solution to get a little bit behind, a little bit forward, a little bit behind, a little bit forward, a little bit behind, a little bit forward, to get a perfect sort of wrap around. But nonetheless, I mean, it still looks quite good, and it's a lot of it's based on the speed of the thing. Because it just goes boof. You very much get that, you don't necessarily notice it that much. It's just because you work in such a slow pace whilst looking at it in After Effects, it starts kind of bugging you that you weren't able to get exactly what you wanted to get. It's a bit like, as I say, with that growth. You couldn't tell that it was actually growing when you actually play it normally, but I promise you, it is in fact growing on the symbol. There's one other thing I would mention. These shockwaves, I offset them slightly so that you get a boom boom, because I felt that it felt better to have them offset rather than have them both come down at exactly the same time. But this shockwave is another Video Copilot. Yes, I know. As I say, I've said their name more than I have said my own, more than I have said anything else in this whole affair. But it's because they are, incredible tutorials. I know I've said that so many times. Shut the fuck up, will you? Stop talking about Video Copilot. I can't, because this is a Video Copilot tutorial here. This shockwave is an interesting one, because what you do in it is you run... You're pointing at the screen again. What you do is you run a sort of... I'm fairly confident it begins as you guessed it, it begins as a fractal noise. Oh, hell yeah. But you run a fractal noise along like the top of the screen, and then I think you animate a mask that drops down the screen, and that gives you your sort of outward movement. So from the top to the bottom gives you a woof movement. And what's very clever is obviously that's starting out as a straight line, and that's it. But what you do is you use polar coordinates, and then you can wrap it into a circle. And that's, again, it's one of those ones where one of the reasons I love Video Copilot so much, oh boy, do you, is the fact that they give you that sort of knowledge. And it certainly for me, it was like, fuck, that's clever. And when you get a tutorial that makes you react in a, fuck, that's clever sort of way, I think it very much aids in the learning process, and that shockwave is rather nice, and you can increase its size, as was seen there. This one, again, Saber plugin, just on a circular mask. So that's the other point I think I already made. You can attach it to just a line, which would be, you can have a point there and a point there, and then you can move those points around. Or you can state, please go on to the layer masks, which means if you put in a circular mask, it will attach itself to that circular mask. You can also, because if you look here, this is going to be very similar to the Paladins intro that's a little bit later, so I will go into it again. But I intended to pause it. But what I did was I made a little mask that runs along there, so that I could bring out the flame, and little masks there as well. So you can bring the flame out, round, drop down, drop there, and it's all keyframed on the beginnings and ends of the Saber plugin, and then you can just attach it to a text layer as well. So you can say, Saber plugin, please attach yourself to this text layer, and it automatically just wraps around the text. Now, you do sometimes, because you can see, I think, for starters, I think the flame there is a different variation of the Saber plugin than the flame for the text. But also, you have to manipulate the settings a lot for text, otherwise it's completely unreadable, and it shines so bright around the core that it's completely obscures the text there. But it's, as I say, it's so versatile, the Saber plugin. It's incredible, and I will not shut up about it. It's incredible. And of course, I suppose one other thing, again, very weak at remembering the kind of extra layer. I so focus on the visuals that I forget the sound effects, because of course, wait for it, G-Dragon. I believe most people worked that out, or at least sort of most people found at least half of it in, I believe it was Mortal Kombat 9. Might be, might not be. In one of the sound files of Mortal Kombat, there is a Black Dragon wins, because Black Dragon is one of the factions. So naturally, that's where I can get Dragon from. And then if you splice the end off of Jade, you, guess what? Get J. So you can go J Dragon. And what helps is you don't even have to splice that much off of the Jade, because J Dragon, it's still JD, which is quite nice. So that was a nice little manipulation of the announcer's voice in order to get my name literally everywhere, because once I found that I could have J Dragon, oh boy, did I overuse that probably, because you've got the beginning section, J Dragon, fight, and all the end sections, J Dragon. Which is good. That's definitely my favourite one, that evil laugh he's got. Okay, let's carry on, and okay, I went a little bit too far. I hadn't intended to. Can we catch what I'm after? Very quick. Okay, so this we'll discuss a little bit as well. I ran 2 layers, so I duplicated the footage layer of this area, and then what I did was I just ran a mask along the top half of one and along the bottom half of the other, and as I animated the axe through, so I just sent the axe along, and what I did afterwards was I just pulled certain points of the mask up and certain points of the mask down in order to get a nice sort of tearing effect. So as the axe plows through, you get that tear. And what was convenient was technically that Mercury effect is all up at the top here as well, but obviously it's covered up by that area. So it's all to do with sort of multiple layers and then all the other things. Right, let's just try and pause it on the axe. Exactly the same technique as I was discussing earlier on, in terms of that is a 2D shape made to look pseudo 3D. What you do, layer, another layer, third layer, that layer in the middle, rather than black like I did for the sort of Saints Row bits, that is a blue. It literally just eyedropped the light blue on the edge of the axe, and you can see it does provide, it's not perfect, and like seeing it here you can kind of see it a little bit more, that it's not a 3D object, but when you just have it, I think I've gone back too far, haven't I? Oh well, that's fine. We get to hear J Dragon again. But as it passes through, your eye sort of, I feel your eye sort of sees that as a 3D axe, and it doesn't. It's not a 3D axe. So I find that quite clever. I will just address as well, colour shifting noise in the background. I don't think that was colour vibrance this time from Video Copilot. I think that was just a tritone or a tint. I've got a feeling it was tritones. I was using a lot of tritones in this one. The way the fatality comes on, I believe now, was I particularly clever with that, or did I not get around to doing that? I can't remember. Yeah. I don't know, is the honest truth. But I think I might have, at the very least I considered it, whether it worked or not, I can't remember. But what I did with the fatality sort of entering the screen was I think I used the Mercury effect again, and this time again to do with these lumen mats and stuff I was discussing earlier. If you make everything black and then you make your Mercury white, when your Mercury sort of drips down the screen, the white of the Mercury can be used to lumen mat or inverse lumen mat. I can never remember which way round. It's basically, the way I do it is, did that one work? No. The other one then probably. Oh yeah, there we go. It's not the most technical method, but it's one that works for me. But so when the white of the Mercury effect touches the fatality layer, it will essentially then bring that fatality layer into visibility on its layer. Oh, it's genuinely lucky you don't do tutorials, because your explanation skills are shit. One further thing to note, we'll have to pause it reasonably quickly because you can't fully see it, but I was very pleased with this little extra. It's not, as I say, it's not the most obvious if you're playing it at real time, because the blood is supposed to, quite rightly, take over. But I did stop the blood. I tactically stopped the blood just as we were fading away so that you can legitimately see it. But I was very pleased. This is a bone font, obviously, for here, but I also used the letter I believe, as extra bones. But you can see where I've just suggested this idea of bones on the logo. So you've got the dragon's sort of ribcage and spine, and then I know this part of the logo doesn't have bones, but I wanted to keep the bones anyway. It amused me somewhat to keep the bones there, and it's sort of a reference to the X-ray maneuvers, which I know the X-ray moves per se have been removed from MK11, but you still get a sort of X-ray effect when you do crushing blows and stuff. So the text ends up as a skeletal form because it's been sliced in half, and the logo becomes a skeletal form, and I was quite pleased at that. And then this background was an interesting little fleshy horror tutorial I did in Photoshop as well, and it was quite fascinating because it's a lot of, I mean, this is a basic texture from somewhere. It was a free texture for the tutorial, and then you do a lot of overlaying dark layers and dark gradients to really bring out the sort of depth of the texture, and it was quite a clever little tutorial, but went nicely because I wanted a fleshy background to suggest, this whole thing is considered a living intro, and then you just had it sliced in half. So I think it's probably one of, if not the best intro I have ever done, because one crucial thing is the simple fact that it is nice and punchy as well, because it's like, okay, fight. We're getting on with it. It's nice and swift. It gets right into the subject matter. I suppose I could have cut one of the fighters' ideas out, but then again, Sub-Zero brings in the idea of the 11. Scorpion brings out the full Mortal Kombat. The only one that really perhaps should have been left out was potentially this one, but I don't know. It still runs quite smoothly and nicely. It doesn't feel out of place. Oh, I suppose actually, I did mention the fact that I did the colour backgrounds, but I will just address something further with the colour backgrounds. Scorpion dresses in blue. That's not true. Sub-Zero, primarily blue ninja. Scorpion, yellowy ninja. Wait for it. Maybe I should have sped up this bit perhaps, but I needed him to flame port, otherwise he wouldn't be the other side. I grant you, Shang Tsung doesn't really dress in green, but it was the best colour I could do, because I think he's primarily sort of orangey white, and I'd already used orange. Raiden dresses in white, and then just orange, because that was the orange of the flame, and then red for the blood. So there was method to the colour shifting in the background. It wasn't just, oh, fuck it, random colours. Okay, so I was asked by Mr. C. Squarepants what is one of my favourite intros, and we are about to find out, I think, because it still retains to this day to be one of my favourites, and it's one of the live stream ones. So that again, I'm fairly confident this was another Video Copilot tutorial in this sort of, it was some kind of camera it was a camera zoom tutorial thing, was it? Yeah, it was a very interesting one, because what you could do was you set up, oh, here we go. You set up these sort of frames here. So this is basically just a straight line, and this was where I was first-ish, certainly one of the earliest points I was introduced to the wiggle idea. I must admit, the weird sort of right, oh god, I can't catch the appropriate times on this bloody timeline. But those, I gotta say, those wiggles in the background, I genuinely have no fucking clue how I did them. But I think this actually, interestingly enough, this could have been the first time I ever discovered, I don't know what the time frame would be exactly, but it could plausibly be one of the first earliest moments I learnt the sort of layer pseudo three-dimensional trick. But so here, what you did was you set a camera to look at this frame, and then you could automatically get the camera set to look at the next frame. So the camera would automatically it would guess the best location, and then you could add blurs and stuff. It was quite a clever little thing. It's kind of what the tunnel idea was based on, but I didn't use any extra sort of expressions and code. Now see, I like this little segment. It keeps getting sort of caught by Twitch going, we've muted it because you can't use, Carry On My Wayward Son. But it was designed to be a minute's worth of sort of, okay, I've started the stream. That's going to notify people. I've now got about a minute just to prepare myself, let people get in the stream, let people say hello. There you go. Right. I'm going live soon. And then it was all sort of timed to get the character from A to B for this minute-long video. But the piece I really rather like is... wait for it. I mean, I think I was just in a sort of mood to use this song. I just really liked this song, so I used it. But this one... it's time to play the game. To play the game. So, it's silly, but if you pay attention to the lyrics of both songs... I hear the voices say... what do the voices say, though? Time to play the game. Time to play the game. Time to play the game. For those interested, I want to say Carry On My Wayward Son is Kansas? I think. My brain has been flailing trying to work that out for a while. But I'm fairly certain Carry On My Wayward Son is a Kansas song, the band Kansas. And then I can't remember who the band is for Time to Play the Game. But the idea, I believe it was a variation of Triple H's. If you're a wrestling fan, you'll know who Triple H is, I would think. He used to... I mean, when I watched it, he came out to a theme which was by Motorhead, which was, it's all about the game and how you play it. It's all about control and if you can take it. It's all a bunch of shit. Something make it. It's all about the fair. Official lyrics, that last bit. But this was a variation of Triple H's theme by a sort of slightly, shitter band. But the fact that it has that time to play the game, time to play the game, it just made sense. We're ready now. It's time to literally play the game. And I was always quite pleased with that one.